Yes.
Perfect.
Okay, let's go. Sorry about that. Let's get started. So, thanks for having me here today, and just a little background who I am, what I've been doing, and why I'm talking to you here about sustainability. My recent experience, what I actually draw into this presentation today, is mainly coming from Saari Residence, founded by the Kone Foundation, where I worked for 2 years as a coordinator for ecological residency program. I was there from 2020 to 2022, and we developed an ecological residency program there with the team. And after that, after summer this year, I moved to another role where I work as a project manager for ecological transition action plan for sustainable cultural and creative sectors in Finland at Helsinki-Uusimaa Regional Council. And I also do some eco-coordinating work for the NARCA network, Nordic Alliance for Artist Residencies on Climate Action. I will talk about that briefly later as well. And my own background is in environmental policy and contemporary art. So art and ecology, they've been sort of following me in my life for the past 20 years. So here we go. This is the Saari residence, and every picture you see in the presentation is taken from there, just to illustrate a little bit about the place and the context and the space. And because I like to put things in a context also on a map, so this is where the Saari residence is located on the southwest Finland. It's in a rural area in the countryside, 30 kilometers from the biggest city, Turku. So it's quite peaceful environment. It's a big residency, but also we are very remote, very peaceful and very quiet and dark in winter. So it's not a network residency. So here's just a few basic facts about the Saari residence. How do we operate? It's an international artist residence for artists of all disciplines. It's been running for 14 years now, and we have annually 80 to 90 artists from Finland and abroad. We run individual residencies where people come and stay for 2 months, and then in summer months, we have group residencies that are shorter, from 2 to 4 weeks normally, for bigger groups. And they have 5 staff members at the moment, so the organization is not huge, but still well-resourced. We have director, residency and communications coordinator, community artist, estate manager, and residency host. And I'll point out the community artist, which is really specific for the Saari residence. She's my colleague Pia, who's been working there for 8 years now. And she's there full time, and her task is to create links with the local community and the residency by working with them with artist projects. So that's quite specific for the Saari residence, and that's been very valuable for grounding the residency into the local community. And then I worked there for 2 years in 2022. And here's a short outline of what I was planning to talk about today. And I think the foundation for building the ecological residency program, or starting to think in Saari, when we started to think how should we improve our sustainability, this came up pretty soon. So we realized that we have to, of course, develop our own organizational sustainability, the way we operate our daily practices, and cut down our CO2 emissions wherever we can. But then already from the beginning, in the core of our actions has been the residency program, so to say, which means all the work that we do with our artists, because we see that could be the more long-term handprint that we can leave with our work. And third pillar, which is as important, is networking and collaborations. And as I said earlier, the residence, especially in the rural areas, is very integrally part of the local community. And that's something that is very important to consider. And then, of course, we're part of international and national residency networks. And I will talk about a little bit NARCA network later. And I forgot to say, if you have any questions, please just interrupt me, ask. I can't really follow the chat so well at the moment, so you can just shout out your questions. I'm happy to be interrupted. And also, when we talk about sustainability at the residency, at the artist residency, we consider that there's 4 dimensions of sustainability that should be considered. And today I'm mainly going to talk about the ecological sustainability, but also it's important to consider social, psychological, and cultural sustainability. And what I mean by that is, well, this might be very, very obvious for all of us, but I just still wanted to write it down and open it here. Well, on the top is the ecological sustainability here, because operating within the planetary remits sets us limits where we have to work, but we can't really extend. But then within that, as important is, of course, consider social sustainability. And it's we take pride that because we're in a position to pay our artists, we do pay them. And of course, we pay a lot of emphasis for fair treatment and fair working conditions. And connected to social sustainability comes psychological sustainability as well, which means offering support, care, and security, and also enabling healthy working habits. And we've been realizing that some of the artists that we've had have been very overworked and burdened, even within that 2-month time in the residency, although the aim is to give them a space to slow down and focus on their work. So we are also constantly looking ways to slow down the pace of doing things and really giving and enabling the artist time to focus on artistic work, because you can't change the system if you follow the rules of the system. So the psychological sustainability factor is also really important to trying to tackle, because it goes really in the heart of our thinking. How do we operate as a part of the big capitalist system or not? So yeah, we can talk about that also a little bit more later. And then there's the 4th pillar, cultural sustainability, which can mean a lot of different things, of course, depending on where the residency is located, how it's run. But for us, it means respecting and fostering the language, tradition, and cultural heritage. Like you saw in the pictures a little bit already, the Saari residence the buildings are really old. They're from the 17th century. They're protected, and the residency is surrounded by cultural heritage environment also. So also keeping all that up, protecting that is part of our work, what we do at the Saari residence. Well, there's the picture of the surrounding cultural heritage environment, just to give a little bit of a context. But then the kind of the everyday practices, of course, this comes first when we started thinking our sustainability program. Of course, we have to first look into our own actions and the biggest factors that are contributing to global warming: energy, heating, transportation. This is, of course, something that can vary a lot. What you can change, what you can affect on, what you can do, depending on resources, depending on who is owning the building or the office or the premises where the residency is operated. So all the examples that I give here, they are coming from quite well-funded residency program with a lot of resources. But I'm trying to pull out examples. I will show all the examples that we've been doing, but that doesn't mean, of course, that this is a model that could be implied to all the actors. So there's always probably something that we can all do, and depending on the context. In our case, the tackling the energy and heating emissions was fairly easy, because our heating source is geothermal heating, which is a renewable source of energy. And that has been in place already since the beginning of the residency. So that didn't require even that huge of renovations. Of course, that has to be upkept and renewed every 10 years, but still the foundation, so to say, was laid out really well from the beginning. And well, nowadays we're only using 100% wind energy, renewables, and also because we need to have a car at the residence, we're located on the countryside. We leased electric car 2 years ago, and that has been in a weekly use since. But nevertheless, we always encourage the residents to use bikes, public transportation, and just, walking around, staying around the residency, staying also a lot in place when they come for us for 2 months. And that also is connected to the slowing down the pace of doing things. So we're also hoping that when people arrive to residency, they would actually, calm down, stay there, spend their time at the residence, and look around the local nature and the local surroundings, and find some interesting things around there and appreciate that what we have around the residency. The second big pillar is food. This is often overlooked, although it's a big factor, big emission source. So we decided to change all the food in our events that we serve to be vegan. In some cases, we still serve vegetarian food. But well, that is probably obvious, better for planet, better for animals. So I always encourage everybody that just be brave, go on and try new things, go vegan. Don't even stop being vegetarian if you can, or at least sometimes try out offering only vegan food. People normally really like it when they have it like well made. And I just wanted to pull out this here. This came out last week during the COP27, and I was really happy to know this in a newsletter of Institute for European Environmental Policy. It seems like finally the food system transition has been in the focus of COP27 negotiations in Egypt this week. It's been a bit of a taboo because food is a very personal thing. It's an economical thing, it's a cultural thing, but I feel that now we're finally in a position that we can talk about the radical need in the way we consume animal products, meat and dairy. So hence I really lift up food here as an important thing when you're considering the sustainability program or already working on it. Then I don't want to talk too much about CO2 calculators or calculations because I find it as a tool to get started, but that's not an end goal. But I'll still have 2 or 3 slides. I can show them quickly to give an overview. So when we started, the Kone Foundation and Saari Residence also measured our CO2 emissions just to give an idea where we actually cause the biggest emissions. And that was a good exercise because we wouldn't have guessed the results. So this really helped us also directing and guiding our actions in the future. So like we see here, the biggest source for our emissions were the renovations that were done at the residency at the time. But if we exclude that, the biggest sources for our CO2 emission were the maintenance of the building and the resident the artist travels. But that's probably no surprise for anybody. So that came out there. And the third source for emissions was procurement. There's an interesting fact about the travel that actually only 19% of all our residency artists who arrived at Saari residence came by plane. So that's a really small figure in the end. But nevertheless, those travels accounted for 91% of all the CO2 emissions coming from travels. So that even confirms that if we could cut down the air travel emissions, we could significantly impact the whole CO2 emissions that we cause annually. So what could we do for the air travel, for the emissions coming from flying, slow traveling, as a lot of us are already doing? We are encouraging it in two ways. We're encouraging it and by giving advice how to plan your travel via land, and we're encouraging by allowing more time for artists to travel the residency, and also Kone Foundation is giving a grant for the travel time if it's exceeding 1 week, and giving grant for the travel cost as well. So we want to make people reconsider their means of travel where possible. And also we want to give people the opportunity to try out traveling by land, maybe for the first time in their lives, because sometimes it's more expensive, and hence the support here. And people have been quite interested in this and using the possibility to travel the residency via land. It's still not majority of people who come via land, but I feel that it's getting bigger and bigger, the amount of people who want to travel more slow. Here's another picture from the residency. In summertime, it's very lush and green and very quiet and peaceful. There's a lot of birds there, so it's a natural environment for migrating birds, also in spring and autumn time. Then we're getting into the hardcore of the sustainability program that we've been doing, which is the work with the artists. So no matter what the premises are, no matter what the resources are, no matter how much stuff you have, I think this is the work that we all could be doing. And this is the part of our work that could have the most long-term effect. So since the beginning, when we started planning, developing the ecological residency program, one of our core objectives was to enable insights and finding more sustainable ways of living and working. And we wanted to make the residency to be a place where the artists, when they arrive there, they wouldn't need to think actively on how to make more sustainable choices, but rather that the residency would offer the possibilities for that and facilitate sustainable choices in everyday life. So we started by looking into our own operations and our own daily practices, and we wanted to make them as sustainable as possible. So when the artists arrive to the residency, the everyday choices are sort of made for them already. So they don't need to fight against the unsustainable practices in their life at the residency. The third very essential core objective since the beginning has been increasing empathy. We wanted to work on this with the artist. We're hoping that hopefully the people, after spending 2 months at the residency, would have hopefully understand or thought the other beings differently. It's very hard to even put on words and even harder to measure. But having empathy towards the other species is really in the core of changing our ways in being in this planet. And yes, we really wanted to sort of encourage the environment, the mental environment where we exist in peace with nature and other species. Meaning that we encourage plant-based eating, no hunting is allowed, on the land around the residency. And we also doing quite active work on preserving the nature and increasing the biodiversity in this art residence. And we always try to involve the artists in that work as well, if they like to. It's voluntary, but we always invite the artists also in the biodiversity maintenance work. And what we do in practice, with each artist group that arrives to residency, we normally have from 6 to 8 artists at the same time. We organize study groups for them. We do a couple of field trips every time. And sometimes we organize lectures for the artist. And we're constantly looking for new ways to also enhance the collaboration between scientists and artists. But I really like especially the field trips that we've been doing. That could mean that in the autumn we might go for mushroom picking trip. In springtime we do bird watching trips. We normally have a guide, some expert telling us about migrating birds. Sometimes we've been visiting forest research stations. We always negotiate that, and we talk with the artists and we listen to their wishes as well. Also in winter time, we've been building bird nests, which is sort of very, I love that. It's a very practical way of helping the endangered bird species to thrive around the residency. And people normally like it. It's a fun workshop to do, and it brings people together. You get to work with your hands. Things like that. There's no limit, like, imagination is just the limit. But this is really in the core of each residency program. And also what we decided from the beginning, we decided to adopt an attitude that we will test out things, and we're also open to failure, or not failure, but if things don't work the way we wanted, then we can change the course and try out different things. Because only by doing that, only by being open of finding new ways of operating, we can actually find something new. And we also feel that because we're a bigger residency center, we have the responsibility to share all the best practices and learnings we gain for the other smaller residency organizations and other art institutions. So this is what we've been trying to do, sometimes very playfully, but always with these core objectives in our heart. But we're really, what I mean by playfully is that we're really testing out different things we can do with each residency group. And that has been very, very, very fruitful. So how did all this get started? Just a couple of words about that, because I feel that it's very important in Saari residence case that the idea for the initiative for the ecological residency program came from the board of the residence. So from the higher up in the hierarchy, the senior management, so to say. So they wanted to really focus on sustainability in the coming years and the future as a whole. So ecological coordinator, I was hired for 2 years full time. So that was a big sort of mental investment for the program. And really, like, since the beginning, the long-term goal for the program is to develop new understanding of the way we operate and really aim at a paradigm change within the organization and in all the operations that we do. And to get there, we also, of course, need to have a team that is committed to these goals, because I really feel that the staff is the heart of the whole residency program. You can't fulfill your core goals without staff who is standing behind them. So this is also something that we paid a lot of attention to, that we wanted to really recognize the existing knowledge within the staff. I think it's also important to notice that not all the expertise needs to be hired outside of the organization, but it's really important to focus on the skills of the staff and the knowledge of the staff already in-house. And we also wanted to offer the staff, all of us 6 at the time, opportunity to continuously learn new things. So staff was always, we all were always invited to join the study groups and field trips with the residency artists. And of course, everybody was always encouraged to participate in webinars and trainings of their own choice, whatever was like practically feasible. And I think the most important point here is, of course, that enough resources were given to the staff to integrate the ecological residency activities into the normal operations or the way that things were done before. So we were all given working time, training opportunities, and some budget as well. So the ecological residency program was never like on the second space in the working list, but we'd always put it as a priority. So and that was really coming from the senior management. So what did we do for the 2 years? This is already what I talked about. But I would maybe lift out the third point here, that the change of the institution starts from inside. So whatever you do, the ecological residency program or activities, I feel they're only as strong as the member of the staff who least believes in the work you do. Meaning that if your staff, if we don't believe in what we do, it won't work out. So we started working within the team as well since the beginning. We had kind of a few workshops per year and ongoing discussions every week around coffee to reach a shared understanding what our values and goals are. And this is really important. I can't underline it more. Often there's not much time to talk about values in the workplace, or we're just getting so busy that the value talk maybe doesn't happen, it doesn't take place. But it's really important that we all can share certain values. Of course, we realize that we're very different in Saari as well. We are coming from different backgrounds, we are different age, different people, but we reached the understanding that we share certain core values. And then things started to click, and working together became easier. For instance, we were able to agree that we only offer plant-based food, and we all understand why we're doing that, because we share the understanding that this is one of the quickest ways to reduce our CO2 emissions. And yeah, I'm checking the time here now. I want to leave time also for discussion, so I go this through quite quickly. And one thing also very important, that is communications, realizing that often we don't communicate enough what we do. A lot of art institutions, residency centers, don't communicate enough what they do. So it's only by accident that you found out that someone else is actually doing similar kind of things that you've been developing. So this is a challenge still, but we also try to approach it differently and try to start communicating more about our trials and errors and unfinished projects, and not just focus on the finalized big success stories. And more like share small bits of thought, small bits of daily practices, small bits of development or failures even. It's hard to change your way of communications, but there are different channels for that as well. But it also makes us much more human, and it really helps in creating networks, because you hear what the other institutions are already working on, even though it's not finalized projects, because then you can share and you can form networks and support one each other. And also, of course, internal communication is important, that everybody in the team or in the staff, or whether you're 1 or 2 people or 3 people, then it's easier to share, but that you get everybody involved and engaged in the sustainability work that you do. that is not just on the shoulders of one person. Then there is always this is the dilemma that I faced in the beginning, that knowing that we have now 8 years to curb out our the emissions to stay in 1.5 degrees warming goal. So there's a need for really rapid actions. But then at the same time, you can't change the way the whole residency organization works in an instant. So how do you tackle this dilemma of that, you know that there's a climate emergency and biodiversity crisis, and then you know that the change will take time. We talked about that as well a lot in the team, and we just ended up, we decided on that we need to agree on certain things. Like, for instance, we can't obviously spend time on basic issues. We have to be able to share an understanding that a fast transition to post-fossil future is inevitable, and to reach that goal, we need to take certain actions, which means traveling slower via land when possible, offering plant-based food, and changing all our energy consumption to renewables. And then the need for empathy. This is also something that has to be, for us, it was obvious that this has to be in the core of our actions, because unless we can change our relationship with other species, we'll never change the way the system works. I mentioned this already earlier, that the peaceful coexistence with other species is really the key for sustainable change, because that really cuts through everything that we do, how we use animals for food, how we respect the natures, how do we tackle the biodiversity crisis. So this is very important for us. And this is probably my last slide. So we're getting towards to the end of this one. But I wanted to end up with of course, the most important thing that is always in the core of thinking is that the transformative power of art, and also artist residencies have transformative power. So that's huge. And I really feel that we can make things differently. We can be the change. So also that I feel that if we don't, as an art institutions or residency centers, if we don't use the opportunity to operate more sustainably, who would do it better than us? So even by starting with little things, that's great. I mean, if the little things is that what you can do, or changing the whole way of operations, that's great. But there's no excuse for not taking the action where we can, because I think the power of artist residencies is that we are very agile compared to many other institutions. We are very agile, we are courageous, and we really have the possibility to give voice to the voiceless. And I know this is now like moving from the artist residency organization to public sector. So I really see it a little bit further, more far. And I really see how agile art organizations are. And I think that's a massive strength, and that should be used more courageously. Then I would have a couple of more slides in another presentation about the networks, about the NARCA network, but I could also leave here a little space if somebody wants to ask something, or if you want to go back to something that I talked about earlier.
Коллеги, есть ли вопросы сейчас по презентации Яны? Можете поднимать руку, я думаю, можете просто включать микрофон.
Excuse me, should I take the recording off now? What do you think?
Yes, let's do that.
All right. So that the questions can be without recording. I'll end the recording.
Yeah, thanks.